Okay, so imagine this for a second. You're in your car, stuck in traffic, maybe a little stressed.
Yep, been there.
So you put on your favorite playlist. It's that one song, the super catchy one, the one with the beat that just gets you going.
Right.
Think you're just killing time, maybe boosting your mood. But what if that song is actually a Trojan horse?
Wow, that's a heck of an image to start with. A Trojan horse for what exactly?
For a spiritual invasion, we are taking a really deep dive today into a transcript from a group called Little Light Studios. And they lay out this, well, it's a pretty mind-bending theory.
Okay.
The basic idea is that the entire modern music industry, we're talking hip-hop, pop, even some of the stuff you might hear in church, could be designed to bypass your brain's defenses.
To serve a specific and, I guess, dark agenda?
Exactly. And we aren't just talking about like bad influences or some swear words here. The source material we're looking at today treats this as literal spiritual warfare.
Right. It's an analysis of what they call the secret religion of the music industry.
That's it. So our mission today is to really unpack these claims. We're going to look at the neuroscience, how music supposedly affects your brain.
And then there are some truly wild stories about A-list celebrities in the occult.
Oh, yeah. And the big argument that pop culture is essentially a form of religious indoctrination.
And just a quick tone check before we down this rabbit hole.
Please.
Our job here is just to guide you through this very specific worldview. We're analyzing the arguments as they're presented in the text.
Right. We're not endorsing it. We're exploring it.
Exactly. Whether you believe in this stuff or not, the internal logic is. Well, it's fascinating. And the mechanics they describe are worth understanding.
Okay, so let's start with the hardware, the brain. Because the source doesn't kick off with demons, it starts with biology.
Specifically, the frontal lobe.
The frontal lobe.
Right. This is kind of the foundation of their entire argument. The source claims that the frontal lobe, your prefrontal cortex, is the most holy place of the human body.
The most holy place. That's Kemple language.
Huh.
They're basically mapping theology right onto our anatomy.
They absolutely are. They see the body as a temple, and the frontal lobe is where your judgment, your reason, your morality, all of it happens. The source even calls it the seal of God in the forehead.
It's the seat of your conscious will.
That's it. And they threw out a number here that I found really interesting to kind of put this in perspective.
What was it?
That the frontal lobe is about 33% of the human brain.
33%.
Yeah, versus only about 7% in a dog. And the argument is that this huge difference, this 33%, is what makes us capable of worship.
Huh.
You don't need a big frontal lobe to follow your base instincts,
Mm-hmm.
Eating, sleeping, all that's on autopilot. But to make a moral choice against your instincts, that takes reasoning power. That's the frontal lobe at work.
Okay, so if the frontal lobe is the gatekeeper, like the security guard checking IDs at the door, what does music do?
Well, the claim is that music is this unique key that it bypasses the gatekeeper completely.
It doesn't even knock.
Nope. It skips the frontal lobe and goes straight to the limbic system.
And the limbic system, that's our emotional center, right? Fight or flight, all that stuff.
Precisely. It's your emotions, your subconscious. And the source describes how really fast-paced music or stuff with a repetitive syncopated beat can actually shut down blood flow to the frontal lobe.
Wait, really? A physiological shift?
That's the claim. And when that happens, you stop critiquing the message. You become passive. You just sort of let it in.
So it's like, if I read a legal contract, my frontal lobe is firing on all cylinders. I'm looking for the traps.
Right.
But if you sing that contract to me with a catchy hook and a heavy bass line, I just stop analyzing and start nodding my head.
That is exactly the mechanism they are describing. And once it's in that limbic system, it sticks. They mentioned dopamine, didn't they?
Yeah, the feel-good chemical.
So music releases dopamine, which obviously feels good. But the source also points out that music can increase learning speed. 5-fold.
5 times faster. That sounds like a superpower.
It is, in a way. It's why you learned your ABCs to a melody. You can't remember a random string of 26 letters from kindergarten, but I bet you can sing that song right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the source says this is a double-edged sword. If you're learning 5 times faster, but your critical judgment, your frontal lobe, is offline, what exactly are you learning?
They're being programmed.
You're just downloading data straight into your subconscious, no filter.
And that leads us right to the programmers. If the brain's the hardware and music is the software, This is where the deep dive gets into some very specific, and I have to say, pretty intense allegations.
They really are. The source argues that the score of the music industry, the soundtrack to our lives, is written by people who are deeply involved in the occult.
Okay, let's talk Jay-Z, billionaire, business mogul, but the source zeroes in on his nickname, Hova.
Derived from Jehovah, right.
Yeah.
The source claims this isn't just like a cute rap name. They say it connects Jay-Z to the 5% Nation.
I've heard of that from 90s hip-hop, but what's the rundown from the text?
The text describes the 5% Nation as an ideology that teaches, pretty fundamentally, that the black man is God and the white man is the devil.
Wow.
But the focus isn't just on the racial angle, it's the self-deification. So when Jay-Z calls himself God MC, the source is arguing he means it literally. He's claiming to be his own God.
And it gets darker. They mention a book of magic being seen in his studio.
Yeah, in the video for 99 Problems specifically, the source claims that as they walk into the studio, the camera deliberately pans over to a book of magic just sitting there.
The implication being?
The implication is clear. The studio isn't just about tech, it's about ritual.
Which brings us to probably the most shocking story in this entire text. The color me bad anecdote.
Oh, man.
Do you remember that song, I Want to Sex You Up?
Of course. It was everywhere in the early 90s, a massive hit.
So the source quotes this former producer who worked in Diddy's circle back then. And he claims that for that specific song, they didn't just hire musicians. They brought witches into the studio.
Literal witches.
Literal witches. To put a curse or a hex on the master track.
And what was the point of the curse?
The specific intent, according to this testimony, was that 13 to 14-year-old girls would hear the song and feel this overwhelming, inexplicable urge to lose their virginity.
That is deeply disturbing. It sounds like something from a script.
It does, but the source emphasizes that the group later got piles of fan mail from girls that exact age confirming that reaction. They write in saying, I heard the song and I just had to do it.
So the argument is that the music itself carried a spiritual payload. It wasn't even about the lyrics.
Play a demon into someone. That's the phrase they use.
And they reference the Bible story of David playing the harp to drive an evil spirit out of Saul.
Right.
So the source just flips that. If music can drive a spirit out, can it invite one in? They argue yes. You can use frequency and rhythm to literally invite a spirit into the listener.
And just so we don't think this is all old school R&B, they go hard on today's pop giants. Kanye, Kendrick, Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish.
It's a who's who. With Kanye, they point to his lyrics about selling his soul crappy deal. At least it came with a few toys. They mention his Jesus is King phase, but are really skeptical.
No doubt.
They cite the Church of Satan, who allegedly called Kanye their best friend for keeping the idea of religion relevant, which, serves their purpose.
And Kendrick Lamar, most people see him as this very thoughtful, almost philosophical artist.
But the source zooms in on a track called Lucy.
Short for Lucifer.
Exactly. The lyrics describe Lucy promising him mansions, success, whatever, in exchange for his trust. They also point to Kendrick wearing that diamond-encrusted crown of thorns at Glastonbury.
That was a big moment.
To the speaker in our text, it wasn't art, it was blasphemy. It was mocking Christ's humility with the industry's excess.
Then you have Taylor Swift, the Willow music video.
Yeah, the source breaks this down as just an open witchcraft ritual. The lyrics talk about a majestic coven and light me up, while you see people in cloaks dancing around a fire.
And the claim is...
What? The claim is that listeners, millions of them, are basically participating in a spell just by watching and singing along.
And Billie Eilish falling from the sky.
They connect her videos for Bury a Friend, and all the good girls go to hell. You see needles in her back, black wings sprout, and then she falls from heaven into a pit of oil. The source says it's a direct reenactment of the fall of Lucifer.
It's interesting because we consume all this as just aesthetics.
Yeah.
Cool visuals.
Right.
But the source is saying, no, look at the symbols. They're telling you exactly who they serve.
That's the core thesis. These aren't just artistic choices. They are acts of worship. And by watching, by listening, you're joining the congregation. You're saying amen to the ritual.
Speaking of congregations, the deep dive takes this really fascinating turn into the roots of these rhythms. It goes way back, past hip-hop, past rock, all the way to reggae and Haiti.
This was a really compelling part of the story. The speaker has a personal history with reggae and Rastafarianism.
Yeah, I think he said he knew Bob Marley's family.
He did. And he makes the point that Rastafarianism isn't just a vibe or like a cultural look. It's a full-on religion.
And reggae is its missionary tool.
It's the evangelism tool. He talked about seeing blonde-haired, blue-eyed Rastas in Europe,
Right.
people with zero cultural connection to Jamaica who were converted to the theology that Haile Selassie was God, purely through the music and the weed. The music bypassed their reasoning and made them believe.
But then he goes to Haiti, and this part honestly gave me chills. Don't follow the drums.
That was the warning he got from the locals. He describes these rah-rah bands that are used in voodoo ceremonies.
And the drums have a specific purpose.
A very specific purpose.
Mhm.
To wake the dead or to induce spirit possession.
Okay, so what's the connection to us?
The source claims that these exact syncopated rhythms are the foundation for American blues, for jazz, for rock and roll. The implication is that the spiritual influence traveled with the beat.
So you can't separate the rhythm from the ritual.
That's the argument. If a beat was designed to summon a spirit in a Haitian ceremony, it still opens that same door in a club in New York City.
That's a heavy statement. It completely challenges our idea of culture. We defend music because it's culturally significant.
It does, and the source takes a very hard line here. They argue that culture has been corrupted by sin. So a Christian shouldn't defend a genre just because it's part of their culture. If the roots are in calling up spirits, the fruit is poisonous.
So if the radio's a minefield, if pop stars are casting spells, and even the roosts are suspect, what's the solution? Is the answer just silence?
Not silence, but a radical change in your musical diet. The source contrasts traditional hymns with what they call feel-good worship.
And this was interesting because they didn't just attack secular music. They went after modern Christian music too, like Hillsong, Bethel.
They absolutely did. They argue that a lot of modern worship is purely emotional. It bypasses the frontal lobe just like secular pop does. It gives you the warm fuzzies, but doesn't ground you in any actual doctrine.
The speaker had a rule of thumb for this, the Satan test.
Right, and this is a practical tool they offered, and it's brutally effective for their argument.
So what is it?
You take the lyrics of a worship song, you replace the name Jesus with Satan. If the song still makes sense, if it's just about you are good, you are powerful, I want to be near you, then it is not true worship.
Whoa, yeah. I'm thinking of some songs now. King of my heart, let me be the shadow where you hide. If you sing that to the devil.
It works perfectly. A devil would love for you to hide in his shadow. That's the danger they're pointing out.
So what's the alternative?
True worship, they argue, has to be specific, doctrinal. You can't sing, Jesus died for my sins to Satan. That statement is exclusive. But generic love songs can be sung to anyone.
They even had a quick conspiracy theory about the Catholic Church in here, Vatican II.
Briefly, yeah. The claim is that Vatican II intentionally changed the music to strip out doctrine. The goal, according to the source, was to make the service more emotional and less intellectual. Again, targeting the feelings, not the frontal lobe. It's all part of the same strategy.
So the antidote is old school hymns.
What a friend we have in Jesus. The speaker told this really moving story about his mother dying of cancer. They sang that hymn.
Right.
It wasn't about a high or a feeling. The feeling in the room was grief. It was about a principle. Jesus is faithful even when I am in pain. And the argument is that emotional music fails you when tragedy hits, but doctrinal music sustains you.
It engages your reason, your frontal lobe.
Exactly. And for the listener who wants to actually do something about this, they offered a challenge.
The Daniel Challenge.
30 days.
30 days of what?
You cut out all secular music completely. You listen only to what they call godly music or hymns. And the promise is that you will notice a distinct change in your mental clarity, your mood, your spiritual sensitivity.
It basically detox.
A detox for the frontal lobe.
You know, we have covered a ton of ground here, from brain anatomy to witches in a recording studio to voodoo drums. It is a lot to process.
It really is. And I think the ultimate synthesis from this source material is this. Music is not neutral. That is the #1 takeaway.
Yeah.
We treat it like wallpaper, like background noise. But this source argues it is the score of your life. It is actively determining the state of your temple, your mind.
It determines who you're worshiping, whether you even realize it or not.
Exactly. You're either feeding the spirit or you're feeding the flesh. In this view, there's no middle ground.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought from the source. It's a pretty provocative question, but it sums this whole thing up perfectly.
If all the music you listen to, your on-repeat playlist on Spotify, everything was played back to you by Jesus or some kind of divine judge right now, what would it be?
Would it be a playlist of worship? Or would it be, as the Bible puts it, the Song of Souls?
Something to think about the next time you put your headphones on.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of the music industry.
See you next time.